little while ago, I covered the Witchboard movies, and I realized just how frequently that the old Ouija boards get used in horror. Like they're not as commonplace as sharks, but they're on their way. And I realized that I had 10 of them just laying around that I should cover, so here they are. But we're not just going to go over the different movies, but we're going to try to figure out the rules. Number 10. We're starting with the Ouija Experiment from 2011, and I've covered the sequel to this one already in one of my worst of lists, but this is sort of unconnected to that one, since in that film, this one is just a movie. This one is done in found footage style and includes a group that are trying to find a ghost via Ouija.
I mean, have you ever seen a good picture or a video of a ghost?
Twilight.
That's a movie and that's vampires, so you're not even in the same realm. I need you to cut it off.
And some of the actors are pretty good, and others are, well, not. They bust out the board and explain the rules, which are...
Rule number 1, there's 3 of them. Number 1, never ask a spirit how it died, okay?
Okay.
Rule number 2, well, never ask the spirit how you're gonna die, okay? Last rule, you never, ever leave the board without saying goodbye.
They make contact with spirits and some stuff goes down, and this guy wants to film some sex and is apparently a master excuse maker.
Over there, that's the camera.
That old thing, that's just a Toy Story camera. I was playing toys in the house today.
No, it isn't.
It is.
It is on. And why is it on? I've learned about that from Brandon. That red dot right there.
Oh, that red dot. Oh, I was playing with it earlier. That's his fingernail polish, baby. It's not nothing.
And when they come back to play again, they don't say goodbye in time. So a spirit enters, and when they try again, Calvin takes the board away. And the estimated budget on this one was around $1,200, which is pretty apparent because it's like 80% people just sitting around talking with very little spooky stuff happening. And when we finally do get some ghost action, it's just people. And since it's a found footage film, everyone films himself doing everything for really no real reason. But thankfully, every once in a while, one of the cast members throw out some fun stuff that I'm probably assuming is improvised since they don't fit with the dialogue at all.
Who in here? Look, I don't know karate, but I know crazy.
It takes until around the 1 hour mark for anything to really happen, and it becomes really weird when it breaks the found footage format for flashbacks, and it's weird because that footage actually looks pretty well done and professional, so it only made me wish that they had shot more of the movie that way. And it's more odd because it breaks that again and goes back to found footage for the fairly silly finale. Number 9. Next up is 2016's The Ouija Possession, which starts off right away with a seance, and this kid uses a pretty new and novel technique to break it up. Jesus, 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 Jesus! Which leads to a corpse rising, and a group of teenagers are all hanging out and arguing and decide to play Ouija, and this guy goes to get it and talks to this little girl.
The Holy Bible?
It's also a great place to start if you want to know everything there is to know.
Yeah, like she can be a slave by being sold off by her father, like in Exodus 21:7. Brinke Stevens appears, and you know, so many movies that feature her nowadays just seem to like frump her up, so it's nice to see her playing a saucy vamp again, and she's Zora. The kids break out the board and immediately break the rule of the first film.
How did you die?
And we go back to the beginning of the film as Jonah is revived from the dead and just so happens to be Zora's dead husband. Weirdly, if you go to the director's IMDb, his name is Luis Carvalho and he has directed 2 films. This one and one called Jonah Lives, and if you look at the page for it, it's the exact same film. So I guess this one was retitled, and instead of that simply going under the notes in the listing, it got its own separate page and listing. Although the rating for this version is a 1.9, and yet Jonah Lives has a 2.5, so I guess people just like that title better. Jonah shows up and starts to kill the kids, and holy crap, this dude is like someone watered down Skeet Ulrich. They try to banish him, but it also seems like he has an influence over some of them. And yeah, this is fine. It's well shot. The actors are all right. No one's really that great, but they're not terrible or anything. The Ouija part is a part of the film, but it's more about the zombie guy that's attacking them than like ghosts or whatever. So there's a bit more of a tangible threat. And he's a pretty cool practical villain, although there's definitely some wonky editing going on when they have to fight. Like they didn't have the footage they needed, so instead they just did this? Number 8. So we're doing Mad Libs, I guess, just like the word Ouija and then another noun. So this is 2015's Ouija Exorcism. It begins with a few kids playing with a board, including a young Hasidic boy, which leads to dead bodies. And his grandfather shows up and it jumps ahead in time, and that kid is now grown up and has a kid of his own. And they're going to see Dov for the first time in a long time as he's on his deathbed and quickly passes. But, of course, Noah is going through his stuff and finds the Ouija board and he uses it. After he does so, he then looks up the rules. Like maybe that would have been a better idea to do first. He's given a slightly different set with
1. Never play alone. 2. Never let planchette count down through the numbers or backwards through the alphabet. 3. Never mention God. 4. Always say goodbye. I mean, 1 out of 4 ain't bad.
Dude, that's like a score of 25%. That's like textbook bad. And this one is not too painful. It's more generic than anything, but just when you think that it's actually bordering on knowing what it's doing, it tosses out an unironic record skip. And it's revealed that back in the intro that young Joe ended up possessed and his father spent his life trying to figure out how to hold the demon permanently. And now Noah has set it loose, but not fully since he said goodbye, so I guess thank goodness for that damn 25%. But it eventually figures out how to possess people. And yeah, the movie's called Ouija Exorcism, so there was bound to be one. But be warned, it doesn't happen until the last 10 minutes. And it's fine, I suppose. Look, this one's well made, but it's a bit of the old same old. Except the one thing that makes it a touch different, and that's the focus on Jewish characters using Hebrew to combat the demon. Number 7. Moving on now, it's 2020's Ouija Craft. Ouija plus noun. It starts in 1905 and a witch trying to protect the Ouija board only to be killed by her own daughter. Flash forward to present day and a young coven learns to use their craft, but one of their potions goes wrong and kills their friend. Like she explodes. Goes wrong is maybe an understatement. Later, when they start having visions that they say are coming from Abby, they go to her grave with a board and try to reach out to her. And they say that using a board in a graveyard is against the rules, which is one that we haven't heard yet, so put that down. And her spirit asks them to cast a spell using the board. She comes back and attacks with a pretty cool hand from the mouth technique, and her boyfriend tries the board alone, which again, that's another rule broken there. In order to be restored, Abby needs a sacrifice, and it's revealed that her great-grandmother was the girl from the intro, so they have to fight her. And you know what that means, low-budget witch battle? Lots of hands waving at each other. A flashback gives us this guy who tells us that there's only 2 rules for a Ouija board, so I guess those other ones in the other movies don't count, and they're 1, never play alone, and 2, never play in a graveyard. and they broke both of those in this movie. So Noah's 25% is starting to look pretty good. And yeah, this was made in the wake of the Craft sequel / remake in an attempt to cash in on the name by putting the word Craft in there. And this is directed by Aaron Mirtez, who I encountered before in my clown video with his film Geist. So it seems like it's his thing to kind of take two popular concepts and just kind of shove them together. And I kind of liked that one, but it was pretty flawed. And this is actually quite a bit better. I enjoyed this. It shows some nice skills and there's some fun tricks, and it's pretty clear that he knows how to set a mood with lighting and cinematography, but the plot is still kind of cut and paste, although it's not really boring and it's interesting enough. It just doesn't feel like anything new, but it's definitely a nice little watch. Number 6. On we go now to 2019's Ouija Mummy. Oh boy. Again, Ouija noun. And not too long after I did my weird mummy list too. So you've got these newlyweds moving into a new house, and they get a necklace and a package which seems to have an effect on Chase here, causing his head to twitch and dream about a dude in a wolf mask. There's family drama, which we find out all about in a massive exposition dump where the characters just basically tell us their whole backstories, and they have a housewarming party inviting his estranged brother. And you know what's missing from most low-budget movies nowadays? Dance scenes in which the person is clearly dancing to a song that is not playing because they did not have the money to get the rights for it. Natalie finds an old Ouija board under the bed and she sets it up and oops, plays by herself, although she does say goodbye. There's a quick cameo from indie director Joel Wynkoop, and I guess I should also mention it. There was one earlier from Brett Kelly, another indie filmmaker, and they bust out the board. Natalie says that they shouldn't break the session by removing their hands and they have to say goodbye, and it's mentioned that it's also a rule to not play by yourself. They do the board.
What the f*** is wrong with you?
Nothing.
Why do you keep twitching?
Not.
And this is the work of Sebastian Godin, who also plays Paul here, and he's made quite a few quickie low-budget features over the course of about 3 years. With about 15 minutes left in the movie, because this movie is only an hour and 1 minute long, Natalie becomes the Ouija Mummy, and it's pretty awesome, like using Chase as a ventriloquist dummy. And where was this silliness for the past 45 minutes? Why wait so long for this to get completely bonkers? Number 5. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna break the chain with 2012's Am Zozo, the first one that's not just Ouija noun. It starts immediately with people doing a board session, and you'll notice right away that there's a different look to it because this whole film was shot on Super 8, a super low quality format which has an old school look. It tells us that there's one spirit that repeatedly shows up around boards named Zozo, and this is, I guess, a real thing where people all over have encountered the same name showing up and causing havoc. So you have this group of kids meeting up at a remote house for a weekend getaway, and it's Halloween. Our lead girl bonds with the Wiccan girl, and of course they decide to Ouija things up. They break an earlier rule by asking a ghost how he died, but then they run into a spirit who is particularly angry towards them and makes hateful comments. And then...
It's just counting down from 10.
Oops, another broken rule there. It says its name is Zozo, and it also says that we'll kill all of them at midnight, and then does a card trick. I think I should mention that this is 45 minutes into the movie. We're at 45 minutes in, and all that's happened is the group has come to this house, hung out and talked, and then chatted with a couple of ghosts with the Ouija board. Then there's some more talking and a several minute sequence of a character gutting and preparing a fish that he caught. Just thrilling stuff. And yeah, 90% of this movie is just the group hanging around the house, having musical montages and not doing much at all, but at least since it's on film and not video, it looks nice. But I'm not joking, the whole supernatural aspect of this film is about 10 minutes of content in a 90-minute runtime, and it's debatable if there's anything supernatural at all. The way that it's shot, it could simply be the minds of the kids, and like the only thing that you can directly attribute to Zozo is the card trick. But hey, it looks pretty. And this guy at the end is actually Darren Evans, who in real life is the guy who first identified and popularized the whole Zozo thing. Whatever, I don't want to call it a phenomenon, and he's appearing as himself.
Let it go. Let it go.
Damn it. All right. Last time I made this joke, it became a copyright issue. Sure, it cleaned up eventually, but it was a hassle, so is it worth it? Is it worth it? Fine. For you guys. Number 4. This next one is gonna seem a little familiar, and it's 2021's Ouija Warehouse, but it's also called Ouija Deadly Reunion. It has a couple of people setting up for a party, and they find a Ouija board and say that the place is haunted, and this is actually one continual take. And then they decide to play the board, so of course bad stuff happens. And they sort of break the single shot thing with this weird edit here. And this guy says that they were supposed to say goodbye because it's a rule. And yeah, this whole thing is supposed to be a single take, which is always a big venture to take on. And they do some fun things with it, like a whole song and dance routine, but it's mostly just the camera turning around to reveal someone standing there for the scares. It takes a jump at the half-hour mark with the arrival of this character, and it's Lynette from the Ouija Experiment, played by the same actress, because I guess that this is also a sequel, and it's the third part of the series, and takes place in the same universe as the first one, although she died in that, so I think she's supposed to possibly be a ghost here? And the camera spins here for no reason, so I'm guessing it's hiding an edit in all this white background, which is pretty tough to see, so well done there. And they do the whole Hitchcock thing with the close-up of hair cuts, which again are hid pretty well. And they repeat the rules from the earlier movie. Never ask a spirit how it died, never ask how you're gonna die, and always say goodbye. I'll be honest, not a lot happens until the 1 hour mark when, this happens. Which is a little silly, but then Michael from the first film is back as well. And he and Lynette have a Ouija reunion in a Ouija warehouse. And look, here's the thing, this movie has a pretty low rating on IMDb, and I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that it's good. The acting is pretty rough, and the story just sort of lollygags for most of the time, and not much happens. But I will respect the hell out of what they tried here. This sort of thing, a single take film, is not an easy task, and they managed to pull it off pretty well. There's some nice camera work and slick edits, and I admire the amount of effort that went into it. So I do recommend it as an interesting piece of film work, but it's not a well done movie in terms of the script and performances. And it seems like the effort went into the complicated camera work and timing more than convincing acting. And there's a really weird moment later on when they're all in an office and there's a bunch of movie posters on the wall, and there's one for Ouija Experiment and Part 2, Theater of Death, so both of those movies are in this universe, which is, yeah, complicated. You see, in the second movie, the first movie was just a movie and all the actors were playing themselves. But now, the actors are back and playing the characters from the first film, but in a universe where they first existed in a fictional movie? Plus, the ending tries to throw a curveball at you that doesn't really make a lot of sense in the full scheme of things. Number 3. It's number 3 on this list, but I think it's my favorite title here, and it's kinda Ouija noun, and it's Ouija Geist. It starts with a man recovering a package from a dead body, which he buries, and this newsman who looks suspiciously like the teacher from Amityville Playhouse, who is also the same newsman with the same name in all of Dustin Ferguson's films. And this actress who was also in Playhouse, apparently playing the same character, so this is theoretically in the same universe. And yep, it's from the same director, John R. Walker, who plays that newsman. India here moves into a new house and finds the package out back, and of course it's a board, but they don't mention any rules. But they don't really break any except for not saying goodbye. And I'm just gonna say right now, I know that it's become a cliche about now, but when you throw me a John Carpenter-esque score with synths, I'm gonna look at your movie more favorably, automatically. Bad stuff starts to happen, her friend dies, her baby gets scalded, her dog gets killed, and her baby daddy pukes hot coffee on her. Just a banner week. When they seek out help from a priest, he talks about poltergeist and states that whatever's in the house may just be a poltergeist and was merely activated by the Ouija board, hence the title. It's done pretty well and looks nice, but I do wish the pacing was a little sharper since it only really ramps things up in the finale, but it's a decent watch, even if the Ouija part is a little less relevant than the Geist part. Number 2. So here's another weird one, and it's Ouija 3, the Charlie Challenge, which was also released as just the Charlie Challenge. And what's Charlie? Well, the opening shows you. It's sort of a magic 8-ball kind of game in which you just set up 2 pencils and a piece of paper with some answers on it and ask questions. It's basically a bargain basement Ouija board. And this scene has it kill some people, somehow. Like, this girl gets hung up by hangers? I don't know. There's also this haunted house with an assortment of oddball characters working there, but it's hurting financially, so they get some inspiration from the new internet rage, the Charlie Challenge, a thing that is supposedly a real thing that I have never heard of until now. A group of teens take them up on the challenge, and I guess they're locked into the house overnight, but I guess they're doing it as a publicity stunt. And he charges them $20 each, but there's only 5 of them, and the thing runs all night, so like 8 hours, using himself and 2 employees. I mean, this whole thing is gonna end up costing more money in the long run. And here's what's weird. This is titled Ouija 3, which is kind of misleading since it's not connected to, well, any other Ouija films. You may think that it's part 3 of the Ouija films, the big budget ones, but ultimately, I think it's supposed to be the 3rd part of the Ouija Experiment movies because it's by the same producer, although again, it's not connected to those. They do the challenge, which again is not really a Ouija board, but I suppose it was close enough for them to put that title on it, and I suppose close enough for me to pop it here on this list. And how did this even seem like a good haunted house idea? Here, sit around this table with a paper and a pair of pencils for a long period of time. Ooh, spooky. Well, something shows up and then starts attacking, and this clown guy is possibly the worst hider of all time. Like, total hide and seek loser right there. And honestly, it's kind of dull. And whoever popped in the sound effects used like the stock noises from kids' cartoons or something. And then there's this bit. This guy gives this girl his jacket because she's cold and they get split up. And she has it on here. But when they cut back to the guy, he also has it on. So it's like Madge Rocks the Multiplying Jacket or something. But then he literally turns the corner and whoops, it's gone now. It's also got this weird couple in a car that the film cuts back to about 3 or 4 times that have absolutely no bearing to the plot. They just sit out there and argue, and then eventually they just leave. And yeah, it's mostly pretty boring, but it's not overly offensive in its terribleness. It's pretty standard for this sort of thing, but I still can't get over the fact that they made a Ouija movie without even using an actual Ouija board. Number 1. Alright, for our top movie here, we're gonna go way back to 1985 before even Witchboard broke out a planchette with deadly messages. It starts with some new rules.
Before you begin, you should imagine yourself shrouded in a ball of white light to discourage the appearance of any low-level elementals.
And the princess from Sword and the Sorcerer, and Sherry Stoner here as Chrissy. And she's acted in a few things, but then went on to much bigger success with writing, and was one of the main series writers for the Animaniacs and a ton of kids shows. She breaks a bunch of rules by 1, playing alone, and 2, asking the ghost how it died. She contacts a spirit named David, coincidentally the same ghost name that would show up later in Witchboard, and she's then murdered as Laura witnesses it. Sipowicz shows up, and after the killer appears to be stalking Laura, she consults the Ouija for help, but it seems like something else is happening as she loses her job because all of her former employers say that she doesn't exist. And her brain scan shows that she's previously had electroshock therapy. So is she just crazy? This was actually a TV movie that ran on ABC and was directed by Jack Bender, who did a couple of these back in the day, including the criminally ignored Midnight Hour. But he also did everyone's favorite Chucky movie, Child's Play 3, before going on to produce and direct this little TV show called Lost. But then things get really wild when it turns out that Laura's entire life is copied from a series of Nancy Drew style mystery books. So did she just make everything up? What does a Ouija board have to do with this again? And then Clarence Boddicker shows up, as does Uncle Victor. And let me tell you, this one has more twists and bends in it than you would expect. And even though it's fairly low key, it's a pretty fun ride. By the end, the Ouija board actually factors in very little to the overall plot, but it's essential to kick things off, and of course, it gave the film its title. But you could possibly delete those aspects of it, and the movie is fairly unchanged. But I really enjoy this. Bender made some really fun little films back in the day, even if he probably shouldn't be allowed near a certain red-headed doll, but I'm kinda surprised that no one really seems to know that this exists, because it has several known actors in it and a completely off-the-wall plot that just seems to throw everything against the wall to see what sticks. And I, for one, liked watching every single one of them go splat. So there you have it, 10 movies featuring spirit boards. And yeah, most of these I enjoyed watching. I mean, some of them were not great, but I feel like there was actually some decent stuff in almost every single one of these. I didn't get mad at any of them watching them. There's a couple of them that were dumber than the others, but they were still at least fun to watch. Very few of these I got frustrated with. So yeah, I guess Ouija board movies have a little bit better success rate than shark movies say. But yeah, if you've seen any of these, let me know down below in the comments. If you have any other Ouija board movies that you would like to suggest that I check out maybe for another volume of these later on, put it down below as well too. If you liked this video, hit the like button, please. Also consider subscribing to the channel if you like what you see here, and consider going to my Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines, and you can help support this channel like these guys do. I certainly would appreciate that. But otherwise, you can just keep on coming back here for another great video. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.